These are the most studied monuments on Earth, the Great Pyramids of Giza. We are told that they're tombs, built by isolated farmers using nothing but copper chisels and rope.
As you can see, we're leaving a lot of metal and very little stone is flaking out.
But right now, across the globe, a completely different story is being buried. Governments are actively planting forests over colossal ruins in China. Scans are revealing impossible geometric structures hidden deep beneath the Amazon. And a mountain in Indonesia might just rewrite the entire timeline of human history. While textbook history insists our ancestors developed completely alone, the physical evidence points to a massive, interconnected global blueprint. Every single one of these supposedly isolated empires chose the exact same 51.8-degree slope, and they locked their monuments perfectly to true north. So what exactly is sitting beneath the dirt, and why is the academic world so determined to ignore it? To find out, we spent weeks analyzing satellite scans, restricted archaeological reports, and suppressed geological data. In this video, we will travel to these restricted sites to investigate the raw mathematics of this global network, analyzing how the Egyptians achieved quantum leaps in engineering, and why the Chinese government is erasing their history. What we found points to a technological memory older than the Ice Age, and almost nobody is talking about it.
But it had abilities that we do not attribute to period of that time, and those abilities included the ability to calculate longitude, something that our civilization didn't crack until the 18th century. These multiple navels of the Earth around the world were fixed points on the Earth where longitude connections were made. They were established places. So I do not think it's an accident. That's why the fact that the relationship of the Great Pyramid to the Earth being on the scale of 1 to 43,200 is interesting. But 43,200 is one of those numbers that we find in mythology and traditions all around the world. Santillana and Bundeshan were of the view that it goes back to what they called some almost unbelievable ancestor civilization.
To understand the sheer scale of this anomaly, we have to start at the anchor of the mainstream timeline. Imagine your project manager tells you to build a perfectly symmetrical 13-acre mountain made of over 2 million stone blocks. You have exactly 20 years to finish it, and your only tools are copper chisels and hemp rope. That is exactly what mainstream archaeology claims happened with the Great Pyramid of Giza around 2560 BC.
Now, Dennis, will we see any progress in our lifetime?
Yes, if you came back in an hour's time, you would see about a 4-millimeter cut down into the stone.
To meet that strict deadline, workers would have needed to quarry, transport, and perfectly set a multi-ton stone block every few minutes, day and night, for 2 decades straight. The logistics become even more staggering when you account for the massive internal granite beams weighing up to 80 tons. For reference, moving an 80-ton payload today requires heavy industrial cranes, yet we are expected to believe ancient farmers hauled them across uneven desert terrain on simple wooden sleds. The builders of the Great Pyramid did not just stack rocks. They leveled a massive 13-acre base to within a few millimeters and scaled the exact proportions of the Earth directly into the structure. The perimeter precisely corresponds to the circumference of the planet, and the monument is aligned to true north with an accuracy that surpasses most modern buildings. The internal shafts are engineered to lock directly onto the constellation of Orion. The 3 main structures on the plateau mirror the stars of Orion's belt, with such accuracy that some astronomers argue it actively tracks axial precession. That is the slow wobble of the Earth's axis over thousands of years, meaning whoever designed this complex was tracking astronomical cycles far longer than a single human lifetime. Mainstream historians claim the ancient Egyptians figured all of this out through basic trial and error, but the physical timeline runs completely backward. The Great Pyramid is the oldest structure on the plateau, yet it is by far the most mathematically advanced. Every subsequent attempt by later dynasties actually got progressively worse, with some structures literally collapsing under their own weight. That is the exact opposite of how engineering progress works. We are constantly told these monuments are nothing more than royal tombs, yet no mummy has ever been found inside the Great Pyramid. The central chamber is completely empty, lacking any funerary artifacts or hieroglyphs celebrating a pharaoh. It functions far more like a massive mathematical machine designed to encode astronomical data than a burial site. Instead of investigating these glaring contradictions, Egyptian authorities actively suppress the physical data. When ground-penetrating radar in the 1990s detected massive, unexplored cavities stretching beneath the Sphinx and the pyramids, excavations were abruptly halted. Permits were permanently revoked, and the official findings were completely dismissed. Access to the flooded subterranean Osiris shaft remains strictly controlled, leaving independent researchers locked out of the tunnel networks branching deep into the bedrock.
If new technology becomes available and they figure out a way to look into the ground and you discover things, especially if they discover the Osiris shaft and it turns to actually
They
be
did
accurate.
not discover the Osiris shaft again.
Okay, you discovered it, but they used their technology to show an accurate depiction of the interior of the Osiris shaft.
The Osiris shaft
is that true?
No,
It's not.
The Osiris
The
shaft.
images that we showed,
The
is that true?
Osiris.
Just look across the southern border at the Nubian pyramids of Meroe to see the resulting architectural de-evolution. A later Kushite dynasty tried to copy the design, but completely lacked the engineering capability to replicate the precision. It strongly suggests the earlier Egyptians simply inherited a master blueprint they did not fully understand. Today, those smaller Nubian ruins stand completely open to the public, while Egypt is fiercely guarding its underground history, restricting access to whatever lies beneath the sand. But if you think an archaeological cover-up in Egypt is suspicious, what happens when an entire government decides to literally bury their ancient pyramids to erase them from the map? In China, the massive monuments are not just fenced off. They are hidden under heavy earth and planted forests, deliberately camouflaged from the rest of the world. And what sits beneath those trees could completely break the accepted timeline of human engineering. In 1945, an American pilot named James Gaussman was flying a routine military mission over central China when something below stopped him cold. There, in the plains of Shanxi province, he spotted a pyramid. At first, he mistook it for a mountain. However, it was bright white, geometric and precise, in the way that only something built can be. He circled it 3 times, and by his estimations, it stood nearly twice the height of the Great Pyramid of Giza. He reported what he saw when he landed. The war ended shortly after, and his account disappeared into a military archive. And for the next 50 years, nobody followed up on it. Then, in the 1990s, satellite imaging found them. But not just one pyramid, over 100, scattered across Shanxi province, clustered around the ruins of ancient imperial capitals. And these weren't rough, vaguely pyramidal hills. They showed precise geometry, flat faces, and clear cardinal alignment, oriented to true north, the same as Giza. When researchers plotted the positions of the largest mounds, several aligned with Orion's belt, the same 3 stars, the same layout. A civilization that had no contact with ancient Egypt, separated by thousands of miles of ocean and desert, apparently building to the same blueprint. How do you explain that? When researchers applied for access to investigate, the Chinese government refused, permits were denied, the structures were declared natural landforms or unremarkable burial mounds, and satellite imagery of the region began appearing blurred in commercial databases. So, we have structures that share the geometry, the orientation, and the astronomical alignment of the most famous monuments on Earth, and the government sitting on top of them won't let anyone take a closer look. Which raises an obvious question. If they're just old tombs, what is there to protect? Because what ground surveys have already picked up without anyone needing to dig is strange enough on its own. Multiple sites near Xi'an have tested positive for unusually high mercury levels in the surrounding soil. That becomes a lot more interesting when you know that the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor, and the man buried with the terracotta army, was described in ancient texts as containing rivers of liquid mercury beneath the earth, designed to mirror China's great rivers under a ceiling mapped with stars. Scientists tested the soil around that tomb. The mercury was real, and now the same readings are showing up at sites that have never been opened. Either the same beliefs and building traditions ran through every Chinese dynasty independently, or all of them were drawing from something much older that nobody has yet been willing to name. When journalists pushed Chinese officials directly about Gaussmann's White Pyramid in the late 1990s, the response was careful. There are no pyramids in Shanxi province, only pyramid-shaped hills, they said. Not quite a denial, but a significant move away from the denial of any pyramid-shaped structures they had made in past statements. And that has remained the official explanation ever since. Today, the pyramids of Shanxi are still unexcavated. Many are covered in mature forest, trees planted deliberately over decades to soften their edges until they look like natural landforms from a distance. Ground surveys have found tunnels and chambers beneath several of the mounds, structures far too regular to be geological. The government's response to those findings has been silence. No excavations, no studies, no explanation for why monuments that could rewrite the timeline of human civilization are being left untouched under a canopy of planted trees. If these are just burial mounds, then open them up. If the geometry is coincidence, then explain it. The fact that neither of those things has happened, that the official position is simply to leave the questions unanswered and the ground unbroken, is perhaps the most interesting detail of all. And China isn't alone in that, because on the other side of the world, a man with a shovel and a theory was about to make a discovery that the entire scientific establishment would do everything in its power to discredit. Every continent seems to hold some version of the exact same story. A researcher finds a structure that breaks the accepted timeline. Experts dismiss it before looking at the physical evidence. And institutions rush to keep the textbooks clean. In 2005, a Bosnian-American businessman named Samir Osmanagic looks at a mountain outside the town of Visoko. The country is still recovering from a devastating war, and the local economy is heavily struggling. But Osmanagic isn't looking at the modern ruins. He is looking at Visosika Hill. Its sides are perfectly flat and the angles are incredibly sharp. To him, it looks exactly like a massive pyramid buried under thousands of years of dirt. He names it the Pyramid of the Sun and immediately starts digging. He claims the structure is over 220 meters tall. That makes it a third taller than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Within months, his team uncovers layers of massive stone slabs covering the hillside. They appear to be made of an ancient geopolymer. Lab tests suggest this cast material is harder and more water-resistant than the concrete we use to build modern skyscrapers. Beneath the valley, they find the Ravne tunnels. It is a sprawling multi-level network stretching deep underground. Inside the dark tunnels, they find massive ceramic blocks carved with unknown runic symbols. Physicists bring acoustic equipment to the summit and detect a continuous 28 kilohertz ultrasonic frequency beaming right off the top of the hill. Then they find a fossilized leaf trapped between the concrete slabs, and the radiocarbon dating results come back at nearly 29,000 years old. If the dating is right, an advanced civilization was pouring high-grade concrete in Europe during the last ice age. The academic world instantly goes to war over the massive claim. The European Association of Archaeologists then released a joint statement calling the entire project a cruel hoax on an unsuspecting public. Geologists point out that the region is heavily covered in Miocene rock. They argue the flat slabs are just natural sandstone fracturing under intense tectonic stress. The perfectly aligned mountain is simply a flatiron created when a layer of hard rock tilts upward. Osmanagic does not help his own case. He starts speculating that the pyramids are actually ancient machines pumping healing energy and cosmic information across the globe. Statements like that give the establishment the perfect excuse to turn the entire discovery into an academic punchline, but the local town of Visoko completely embraces the project. Tens of thousands of tourists flood into the valley. The excavation becomes a massive economic lifeline for a region still bearing the scars of recent conflict. Local volunteers keep digging, and the physical evidence becomes an absolute mess. Geologists insist the mountain is natural, but struggle to easily explain the ultrasonic frequencies or the deeply buried runestones. The data firmly refuses to fit a tidy narrative. Instead of a cautious scientific investigation, the site has become a bitter battleground between wild speculation and rigid institutional panic. But if a single controversial hill in Bosnia can cause this much chaos among traditional historians, imagine what happens when we look at a continent where the pyramids are simply too massive to hide. From Mexico to Guatemala and deep into Peru, thousands of these ancient structures still stand. Here, the mystery is not whether they actually exist. It is how so many civilizations separated by oceans and centuries all use the exact same blueprint. In the dry valleys of coastal Peru sits a 5,000-year-old city that shouldn't exist, Caral. It is one of the oldest urban centers in the Americas, built long before the pharaohs started stacking stones in Egypt. And just like Egypt, it's covered in massive step pyramids. But here's the catch. Unlike other civilizations of their era, the people of Caral had no weapons. They built no defensive walls and left absolutely zero signs of warfare. Instead, they poured their resources into vast ceremonial plazas and perfectly aligned stone platforms. They were peaceful astronomers and engineers who used knotted cords called quipu to record complex data. And then, they completely vanished from the historical record. Thousands of years later, in the central highlands of Mexico, their blueprint reappears on a staggering scale. Teotihuacan. When the Aztecs found this city centuries after it was abandoned, they were so overwhelmed that they named it the place where men become gods. They assumed only divine beings could have built it. To this day, no one actually knows who laid the foundation. The engineering defies logic. With the Avenue of the Dead running perfectly straight for over 2 kilometers, connecting the Pyramid of the Moon directly to the Pyramid of the Sun. To understand that scale, you have to realize you could drop the Great Pyramid of Giza inside the base of the Pyramid of the Sun and still have room to walk around it. But scale is just brute force. What sets Teotihuacan apart is the math. The entire grid of the city is offset by exactly 15.5 degrees from true north. The builders deliberately aligned the entire urban layout with the movement of the Pleiades and Orion star systems. They didn't just build a city, they embedded a massive astronomical calendar directly into the stone. And here's where it gets even weirder. Stand near the base of the pyramids, clap your hands, and the echo doesn't sound like a clap. It bounces off the staggered stone steps and returns as the distinct chirp of the sacred Quetzal bird. And don't think that sound effect is an accident. It is specifically built into the geometry of the structure itself. Whoever built Teotihuacan left absolutely zero written records, but perfectly gridded cities, mathematically aligned to distant star systems, do not just spring out of the dirt organically. These builders all knew something we don't. And you see the exact same knowledge deep in the northern jungle of Guatemala, at a site called El Mirador. Here, the jungle swallows everything. Trees grow directly out of ancient stone steps, and vines choke massive terraces. The logistics of its construction suggest a highly sophisticated civilization that shouldn't have been there. The experts' maps tell us the builders had no metal tools and absolutely no pack animals. Yet somehow they quarried, transported, and stacked millions of limestone blocks with devastating precision. They built a pre-Columbian superhighway system linking El Mirador to distant sites across the region. It requires a level of central planning, far beyond what we expect from an early jungle civilization. And if you look closely at the mythology of every region, a deeply unsettling pattern emerges. The Inca of the Andes, the Maya of Central America, and the Aztec of Mexico all share the exact same story. They tell of great teachers who appeared out of nowhere right after a massive global catastrophe. In Peru, they called him Viracocha. In Mesoamerica, he was Quetzalcoatl. The names change, but the core details are always identical. Bearded figures arrive after a great flood, bringing advanced knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, and architecture. They teach a shattered humanity how to rebuild the world from scratch, and then they vanish. Are these just convenient myths created to explain how complex societies suddenly appeared? Or are they fragmented memories of something real? After the last ice age, rising sea levels drowned vast stretches of global coastline where early humans naturally settled. It is entirely possible that advanced cultures existed there and were simply wiped from the physical record by the ocean. If a few survivors spread across the globe, carrying fragments of their lost world's knowledge, the undeniable similarities between the pyramids of Egypt, Indonesia, and the Americas suddenly start to make terrifying sense. In every one of these cultures, advanced knowledge is never described as something they invented. It is always described as something they were given. The Maya claimed their ancestors received the wisdom of the stars. The Incas said their gods descended from the heavens to teach them. These aren't stories of discovery, they are stories of inheritance. The cultural DNA of the pyramid persisted, and replicated itself across oceans long after the original context was lost. Standing in Teotihuacan or El Mirador today, the similarities to Giza or Sion are impossible to ignore. Different civilizations separated by massive oceans and speaking completely different languages all arrived at the exact same architectural and astronomical design. The mathematical odds of that being a random coincidence are effectively zero. Someone, somewhere taught humanity how to build pyramids. But if a structure the size of the Danta Pyramid can sit in Guatemala completely swallowed by trees, what else is still buried beneath our feet? Across the world, new technology is currently exposing exactly how much of the past we simply missed. For decades, experts dismissed the Amazon rainforest as entirely too dense to support an ancient civilization. They argued the soil was notoriously poor and the environment hostile for large-scale urban planning. Then researchers flew LiDAR lasers over the canopy, and the truth became unavoidable. The scanners stripped away the trees to reveal massive geometric grids and mounds shaped exactly like step pyramids. An entire network of cities vanished so completely that it took a laser to prove it was ever there. The pattern did not end in the jungle. In the past few years, ground-penetrating radar in the Sahara outlined grid patterns stretching for miles under endless sand. What is now an ocean of dunes was once a fertile river basin capable of sustaining massive cities. Even in regions thought completely inhospitable, like the Ellsworth Mountains of Antarctica, strange geometric peaks have fueled fierce academic debate. This further proves that our planet was never a blank map. It is a global graveyard of monuments, where floods and earthquakes have reset civilizations and buried the evidence. Uncovering these buildings was easy compared to explaining how they were actually built. We already looked at the impossible logistics of Egypt, but the engineering nightmare extended far beyond the Nile. In Lebanon, the ancient site of Baalbek features rectangular blocks weighing 800 tons each. That's heavier than a fully loaded Boeing 747. At Pumapunku in Bolivia, blocks of hard andesite feature interlocking grooves and flawless drill holes. These ruins sit 12,000 feet above sea level, where simply breathing is difficult. Why did ancient engineers choose to work on a scale that defied basic logic when smaller stones would have been infinitely easier? They chose massive stones, and they arranged them in ways that completely break our accepted historical timeline. Different civilizations separated by massive oceans and speaking completely different languages all arrived at the exact same architectural and astronomical design. They aligned their monuments with the exact same star systems, like Orion and the Pleiades. They shared the exact same structural footprint. The mathematical odds of that being a random coincidence are effectively zero. Whoever built these monuments was not just stacking stones. They encoded astronomical data into ancient monuments guaranteed to survive whatever catastrophe wiped them out. And the most unsettling part is that we're only just beginning to scratch the surface. If a structure the size of a mountain could sit in Guatemala completely swallowed by trees for thousands of years, what else is hiding in the dark? Will the next massive discovery prove these monuments were just shared human genius? Or the surviving fingerprints of a forgotten global civilization? Let us know what your theory is in the comments below. And to find out who really built the pyramids in Egypt, click the video on your screen right now. I guarantee the answer will shock you.